everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm just so grateful and honored that you're all joining the third Intuitive You webinar call. And I'm just so honored that Caley is here because Caley and I met. I was thinking about this. I think the first time we actually met, well, I had been following Caley on Instagram, but the first time we met in person was when I took your class at Wanderlust.
No way, really?
Yeah, I was working in West Hollywood and popped into one of your yoga classes there.
Okay.
And since then, I've gone through Caley's mentorship program, which was incredible. And it was through that program, actually, that I got confidence and the creative inspiration to launch this webinar. So it's just really cool that I now have Caley on as a guest.
I'm honored to be here.
Amazing. And I'll give Caley a moment to introduce herself and tell everyone what you're about.
Okay, cool. Hi, guys and ladies. My name is Caley, and I teach yoga and meditation. I teach locally here in LA. I have a lot of digital content that I create for different platforms. We're just going to mute whoever that is.
Oh,
unless you muted yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks, whoever you were. So I create digital content. I teach at festivals around the world when I'm not in LA, and like retreats. And then I have a mentorship program, like Nikki mentioned. And I also record yoga nidras every month. So my teacher, Jana Rama, taught me how to create yoga nidras that are based on astrology. And I really love that, and it really hit home for me. So I create them now monthly myself and record them and put them on my website to download. And that's about it.
That's all?
Quick and dirty. What else do you want to know? I'll tell you. I have a dog.
Yes, really he's with us right now. But I was so excited to bring Caley on for this particular call because we're talking all about intuition. And one of the things I remember Caley talking about for her personal journey was how her intuition guided her to get to where she is today. And we'll get to that in a little. But just for the sake of the conversation, I just want to start with talking about what is intuition. How would you define it?
Yeah, I think that, we talk about your gut instinct a lot, and our intuition, and those two things are, similar to me and related to me. We were talking about the seats of intuition, you and I earlier. And, we have the heart, which, your heart speaks to you. You can definitely feel things and make decisions based on your heart. And you have the gut, the belly, your gut instinct. And so I think your intuition is linked between those two places. And this is why in a lot of my yoga classes, my workshops at Wanderlust, I created an intuitive based class so that you're working on opening up the chakras along your spine so that your two seats of intuition can communicate. And so that energy is freely flowing between the two, and you can, utilize that to then be able to hear your intuition, because sometimes it's blocked or stuck.
Right.
And so when you clear that out, you can actually access it and hear it and be able to make decisions based on that intuitive hit. So, and a lot of that for me is getting quiet enough to hear. And, I didn't used to have a meditation practice in my life. And so that was pretty pivotal for me in learning to live intuitively. And also, relationships have been big for me to help me find myself and my intuition and to lose it and to come back to it. So I've learned a lot in that regard. So I think your intuition is the heart, the gut. It's the connection between the two. And it's getting quiet enough to hear.
Amazing. And that actually is the perfect segue to the next question, which is how to access your intuition.
Yeah. So it took me some time, I think. I'll talk about like my personal story behind this question, and how I accessed it, and then how I think I'm helping others to do that. So I was in a job in finance, and I was married, and I was just kind of leading this life that was right and kind of checked all the boxes, but didn't feel great to me. There were places I was really unhappy in, and things that I couldn't see being perpetuated for the rest of my life. It didn't feel good to think about the rest of my life being that way. And so I rebelled a little bit. I kind of like threw a tantrum in a way in my life. I I moved to LA, was let go from my job, had severance, started over here, didn't want to move to LA. And I just kind of like threw a fit for a little bit. I jumped into the yoga scene here and, thankfully was very successful. But I didn't know that that's what I really wanted to do full time. It just kind of fell into my lap. It happened. Yeah. And I tell you all the time, but I followed the things that felt the best. I follow the good feels. And that's how I ended up where I am, is that the things that felt the best to me, I was like, I'm going in that direction. I don't necessarily know what the end of the road looks like, but I'm going that way.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember like some specific moments where you sort of had that feeling like, ooh, that feels good? And can you maybe give us an example?
Yeah. So, little moments in time, like getting into a studio that I wanted to get in at. When I first moved to LA, it was Mary Beth LaRue that connected me with Surya Yoga.
Okay.
So that was my first teaching gig. And then it was working on Rose at the Yoga Collective. And then from Yoga Collective to the Hub, Brent LaFoon connected me to them, which is no longer in existence. And then, it was like getting all like into the studios. All of a sudden I was at Yoga Works. And then, my dream was to teach at the Wanderlust festivals, and I got that. And then, also when I very first moved to LA, it was the time of hardtail yoga. So like Krista Cahill and Maria Vieja, the hardtail girls. And I was like, I want to be that. And Catherine Budig, I saw them, and I'm this new girl in LA. I don't know anyone. I can't do the crazy things that they can do, but I saw it and I was like, that's what I want. I want to do that. I want that for me.
Wow.
And it came. And then like 3 months later, Hardtail reached out and asked if I would shoot with them. And so it was just, when I decide in my life that I want something, that is like all I can focus on. That's all I want. And it will happen. It just happens that way.
Yeah.
Because I believe it. I like in my bones, I know it's mine already. Mm-hmm. And you hear that all the time, and from different spiritual leaders, from different thought leaders, it's believe it until you receive it, act as if.
Right.
And I was doing that naturally in my life without ever being taught that. It was just part of me. Since I was young at dance competitions, I'd be like, I won. I just sit back and wait for them to announce, and I'd be like, oh, Miss Thunderbird is, or whatever the thing was. But I just have always been that confident.
Right.
I don't know if my parents instilled that in me or if I was born with that, but I've always been very confident.
Well, yeah, I mean, it shows. That's amazing. And that's so cool that you were able to have the confidence to leave something that you didn't foresee a future in, that you didn't feel good thinking about having a future in that scenario, to then switch it. Right.
I was kind of pushed in that direction more than making the choice, like my job I was let go from.
Okay.
So then I was like, okay, I have severance, which is great. It's a nice cushion, but what the hell am I going to do? I was teaching yoga at the time, but I did not think that would be my career in any way, shape, or form. I was like, I'll just keep teaching yoga and I'll figure out what I'm going to do next.
Right.
And it just so happened to become yoga because things started to go so well.
Right.
And then, my marriage, it was just an issue of me, we started dating at 14. We got married at 24. Wow. And I was just really young and I didn't have the tools to communicate what I wanted and what I needed. And my partner didn't either. Our communication completely broke down. And, had we had the tools, I believe we could have saved our marriage. And there's so much love there. I will always love him. And he's an amazing human. He's not a bad person in any way. But I was young. And I had also just a lot of rebellion in me. And he was my first and only everything. And I just, I just like needed to be wild for a little bit.
Yeah.
And figure out me without him there. Because he'd been there since 14,
Wow, that's incredible.
A long time.
Yeah, that's so crazy.
So, yeah.
And it's also interesting how when you're not, they talk about living in alignment, right? And living your purpose. And when you're not doing that, other things in your life start to kind of be in disarray. And so when you weren't living your purpose, teaching yoga,
everything fell apart.
Right. So it doesn't, shock me that it affected your personal relationships as well.
Yeah. And that you asked about the practices that like helped me to find my intuition. Yoga was one of them. So throughout this whole thing, I was practicing yoga once a day, twice a day when I moved to LA and doing my 500-hour training and other trainings. And that was like my saving grace. It just kept me sane.
Yeah.
And then I found meditation through my 500-hour training with Dharma Mitra. And
So how old were you at that time?
Let's see, I've been in LA for 8 years.
Okay.
And I'm 34. So I was 24, 25.
Okay. And at that point, did you feel as though you were following what felt good, aka following your intuition, or not necessarily totally?
26, sorry. Yeah, at that point, I felt like I was following my intuition, but also there was this like little devil on my shoulder that was like, go do the bad thing. Go have that experience. And I was very selfish. I was very, very selfish when I came to LA. And I just apparently needed that, and that's okay.
Yeah,
and, I had to forgive myself for some of the things that I did during that time. Yeah. But yeah.
So yeah, back to the whole meditation piece. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting that, yoga came first and then meditation. I think that's very common for most people. It's they seek out something that's a little bit more physical, but it has that meditative aspect.
You come for the workout and you inevitably get the work in, whether you want it or not.
Exactly. Yeah. You should coin that. I love that. You come for the workout, but you inevitably get the work in. Mm-hmm. And so let's talk a little bit more about meditation, because I think that, it's something that nowadays is becoming what feels a bit buzzy, right? We're hearing it a lot, and this whole idea of self-care and going inward and tapping in and tuning in and all these things. But I think you and I both have had personal experiences that have changed our lives thanks to meditation. And so can you just talk a little bit about your first experiences with meditation and how that helped you to, strengthen that intuitive muscle?
Sure. Yeah. So first and foremost, I'm an extremely reactive person. I have been my entire life. I'm very emotional and fiery. It's just something, I was a child throwing tantrums like all the time. It was just, and so.
I really can't picture that. You're so grounded.
Oh my gosh, because of meditation and yoga.
Amazing.
And it helps me to react as opposed to respond. I'm not perfect. I still can be reaction.
Right. We're human.
Yes. But it has definitely pushed me and made me grow. And I have had some profound experiences meditating. Mm-hmm. I did, Vipassana, which is a 10-day silent meditation where you don't speak for 10 days, you don't journal, you don't work out, you don't do anything other than the Vipassana practice. And you're meditating from basically 4:30 in the morning until 9 o'clock at night, and then you go to bed and do it all over again for 10 days. Okay. And you're sitting on your butt, and that's it. And so that was profound for me. And I had one of the most transformational meditative experiences in my life at Vipassana.
Wow.
More so than any psychedelic drug I've ever done, than anything,
Right.
And so that moment and many others through Yoga Nidra have been profound and have caused me to realize the depths of what meditation can really access in your subconscious mind, and how you can really reprogram and restructure your brain and show up differently in life. And again, I'm not perfect. It's definitely, if you put my ex-boyfriend here in front of me, I would probably be reactive immediately,
Of course. But, we all have those triggers. Activators, triggers. Yep.
But I am much more aware and much more mindful, and and it's been it's had a profound influence on my life.
Amazing. And I think something too that's kind of important to know, and we actually talked about this a bit on the last call, if any of you guys joined for the second call with my meditation coach Erin, is the idea of consistency. So just how you can't go to the gym once and get a six-pack, you can't meditate once and have this like really strong intuitive muscle. It's something that needs to constantly be worked on, right? And I love how you said reprogram the brain and kind of show up in life differently. And I think that's the point, is when you're living from this intuitive place and following what feels good. I love that, because that's such a relatable way of thinking about it. It's like it's so simple, and we all have been there. We've all been in situations that inherently feel really good or really bad.
And that's your body speaking to you. That's your like
that
very
is your
smart,
intuition.
intelligent system telling you this is good or this is not good for you. So listen and act accordingly. Because if you don't listen and you repress those feelings, like I'm okay, I'm gonna stay anyway.
Right.
Then you lose your intuition. And that happened to me in my last relationship. My intuition would flare and be like, not safe, not safe. And I'd be like, no, I'm gonna stay. I'm gonna go.
Right, because the mind gets in the way. We think we can fix everything.
Yeah.
And we're super hopeful and optimistic, of course.
And then you lose it. Then it will stop talking to you. Your intuition will just shut off because you're not listening, and it will go away. And you lose it. And so, it's vital that you listen.
Yeah, and I think for some of us, we only tend to feel that bodily reaction in somewhat extreme situations, right? Like maybe a situation that makes us feel unsafe or
the fight or flight response.
Right, exactly. Versus actually just living from that intuitive place more naturally on a regular basis.
Well, it is, and meditation is a buzz right now. It is sort of in the popular culture, as you mentioned, and because it's needed, and thank God it's a buzz. I don't care how people hear about it. I don't care if it's a trend. Right. We need it.
Yeah.
So like Light Watkins, our friend, has a book called The Inner Gym, and he self-published that book, and it's all about how you're externally working on your physical body. Why aren't we internally working on our mental body? And my meditation teacher, Johnny Pollard, who created the app One Giant Mind, he talks about meditation like brushing our teeth. So if you think about it, like 100 years ago, we didn't have oral hygiene. We didn't brush our teeth, right? And we had all these other diseases and things that came from that. We lived shorter lifespans and all these things. And once we figured out that brushing our teeth, we could live longer and have less disease, and we started doing it every day, right? Wow. Twice a day. And so if you think about that in context in terms of meditation, isn't it interesting that like we have all of these mental disorders, all of these issues, anxiety and stress and depression and all of the things resulting from that, mass shootings and just such awful, heinous things that are happening right now because of mental disorders and mental diseases.
Right.
So why aren't we doing something on a daily basis to make sure our mental health is sound?
Right.
Where we do something on a daily basis to make sure our physical bodies are healthy.
Right.
Why aren't we doing that for
many
our heads?
things on a daily basis to make sure our physical bodies
are. The food we eat, the
right.
activities we do, everything, the clothes we put on, everything. Our minds are vital, just as vital, if not more than our bodies, right? Yeah. And so think about 100 years from now, hopefully they'll be looking at us and being like, they didn't brush their teeth.
Right.
Just like they didn't meditate.
Yeah.
What do you mean they didn't meditate? What did they do for, hopefully we'll look back 100 years from now and think that about ourselves.
Absolutely.
Those crazy fools weren't meditating. What's wrong with them,
Yeah.
And I don't want to brush my teeth sometimes, twice a day. I at night, I'm like, I'm so tired. I just don't want to do it. Right. But I do it because I know it's good for me. I get up, I go to the bathroom, and I spend, 3 to 5 minutes brushing my teeth, and I go to bed.
Doing what you got to do. Right.
So why don't we do that for meditation?
Yeah.
I don't want to meditate. Whatever. I'm going to sit on my butt and do it anyway. It's good for my mind. It's good for my mental clarity.
It's so true. And what would you say? I mean, because I'm sure most people listening or on here have very busy lives, work, social, family, kid, whatever it might be. What would you say is sort of your, like, you at least have to do X amount of minutes or a certain type of meditation that you do?
Well, I think that you hit the nail on the head talking about consistency. I don't think there's a magic number. I think you do what you can do. Something is better than nothing. Yeah. This is the same reasoning I allow yoga students to come into my class 20 minutes late. I don't care. I'm happy that they've shown up and they're going to at least get 40 minutes of yoga. It doesn't matter to me. As long as they're not disturbing other people in the room.
Of course.
So it's the same for meditation. It doesn't matter. If you have 3 minutes, great. If you have 5 minutes, great. If you have 20 minutes, amazing.
Right.
Like you take the time that you have, especially for parents. And when you have kids, that's challenging.
Yeah.
I was basically a stepmom for 5 years, and like having a kid around is a big deal, and you have to make the time. So whether you're, setting your alarm clock a few minutes earlier, or whether when you go to bed at night, you sit in your bed and you meditate before you lay down, or you put on your yoga nidra and you fall asleep to it. Like there's so many ways. Meditation can be as simple as breathing in for the count of 3 and breathing out for the count of 6. You can do that while driving with your eyes open.
Yeah.
So
my meditation coach and I were recently talking about walking meditation.
Yes.
Literally while you're walking to the subway or walking, wherever it might be to get your coffee, and making that more of a meditative practice if you can't fit it in, sitting down in a certain way.
Yeah. If you're breastfeeding, do it while you're holding your baby breastfeeding, you know?
Yeah.
I also talk about meditation all the time. And like, you know, when you wake up in the morning, your alarm goes off, most of us hit the snooze button. So what if you hit the snooze button and you just slide your little body up and you just, while the snooze is going, you do your little meditation.
That's actually really smart.
You know?
I've never tried that because I always, and here's another thing too, because I tend to get in this habit of like, okay, well, I need to have at least brushed my teeth, and I like to have my bed made and my certain crystal and my journal ready. And it's
so that's an issue.
Right? I know.
We can't be so precious with our meditation.
Right. I'm very type A, so I just kind of like my things.
Me too, obviously.
Right? Yeah. But I mean, to your point, it can be very natural, and
we should be able to meditate anywhere.
Like
if you're on the New York subway, you can close your eyes and meditate.
Right.
You know, in the middle of a club, you can excuse yourself and go to the bathroom and sit on the toilet and meditate. Like it doesn't matter where you are. You know, yeah. You don't have to have a candle and the incense and the shawl and the prayer music.
Right.
You know, no, like that's actually just like delay. Yeah, and you're just kind of making it harder for yourself to meditate.
It's like creating more of a thing around it. Yeah. Right. So sort of going back to this intuitive muscle and intuition, I just want to really like drive this point home of this idea that intuition is something all of us have. We all have the ability to really like tap into this intuitive place. And obviously Caley and I have strengthen our intuitive muscle through meditation. And everyone has the ability to do that. And I'm just curious if you can talk about, you know, maybe a time when, well, two things. One being smaller examples. So where you can feel your intuition sort of kicking in because you are someone who meditates and who has like, you know, done this work for so long. You know, do you find that even on a daily basis, your intuition is kind of speaking to you? And can you give an example of that?
Yeah, I can give a really easy one. So as a yoga teacher, I walk into a room and I have an idea of what I want to teach in my head, right?
Yes.
And sometimes I come into a class, like just the other night on Tuesday, I walked into class and people were lying down, eyes closed. The sun's already setting, you know, it's darker earlier now. Right. And I was just like, oh, they're not going to like what I have planned for them. You know, like,
let's switch
it up. Yeah. Yeah. You can just tell, you know, or like you're walking by someone.
Well, I love that because, you know, how I'm sure everyone here has walked into a room full of people before and you sort of sense something. I'm sure all of you have experienced that. And that's your intuition, right? Yeah. Like that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So simple things like that. Or just like, you know, as a teacher, we have to be aware of like if somebody wants to be touched or adjusted or not. Like if I'm walking by someone and I reach down to adjust them in child's pose and they flinch, then I'm not going to go in, you know, I'm not going to go in for the adjustment. But it's feeling out other people's energy. And then also your own. So like if you walk into, say we walk into Erewhon, you know, and
it's like a food market here.
Yeah. Grocery store.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's really crowded and there are all these people there and they're all lined up for the hot food section. There's a big line, numbers yelling, blah, blah, blah. So I have to like check in with myself. Okay. Am I like really in the space to be here right now? Do I want to go stand in that line? Do I want to be social and talk to people?
Yeah.
You know, even like down to the food you're eating, you can on a daily basis. It's such a simple thing to check in with your intuition. You know, close your eyes and be like, okay, what does my body need today? And there's actually a beautiful, so I went to the Hoffman process. Do you know about the Hoffman process?
You told me about it.
Okay. So for you guys who don't know, the Hoffman process is basically like a week-long introspective dive into your habitual thought patterns, your ways of relating and communicating to humans based on your upbringing, based on your primary caretakers and how they've imprinted you. And so, you know, it talks about you either acquiring those habits identically, you either doing the complete opposite of whatever the pattern was. Like you didn't like that your mom just cut and run when things got hard every single time. So you overstay, you overcommit, you stay longer than you should. Or you find someone else in your life to just reenact that pattern for you. So it's really amazing work. I highly recommend it. However, one thing that they taught us at Hoffman, a beautiful, beautiful daily practice to tune into your intuition, was to check in with a couple parts of yourself. Number one was your intellectual self. So This is like your thinking mind, your like, you know, your type A kind of personality.
Yeah.
So, okay, hey, intellectual self, how are you feeling today? What do you need today? Do you need to be challenged? Do you need to do a crossword puzzle? Do you need to learn something new? Are you exhausted? Do you just want to like go on autopilot today and not be challenged? What do you need? And then there's your like child self, your small, like
Your
inner child,
yeah.
you know, and you check in with that. Like, hey, what do you need today? Do you need to play? Do you need to see friends? Do you want to like color? Do you need held? Do you need a hug?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to give that to you today. You know, and then you check in with your spiritual self. Okay, hey, what do you need today? Do you need to feel connected to nature? Do you need to get, you know, like some sort of movement in there? You know, there's ways to check in with yourself on a daily basis to see what you need,
what you actually
need, food wise, physically wise, spiritually, your
mentally,
little child, mentally, yeah,
emotional, yeah.
So
all of it.
And not only asking what they need, but saying, I'm going to give that to you.
Right. I'm actually going to listen.
I will do it.
Right. And that's another huge part of all of this, right? It's not just tapping in and tuning in and doing the work and meditating and all that, but then it's taking action based off what your intuition is telling you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And that's sometimes even harder than doing all the work to tap into your intuition, right? Like, because what's the number one thing that gets in the way?
Fear.
The mind.
Yeah.
The mind.
And it's always easier said than done.
So can you talk a little bit about that? Have you, can you recall a time that you, I mean, I'm sure you can, that you did not listen to your intuition? Well, actually, you've already.
Happy to. But you should ask, Nikki.
And how did that feel?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, a lot of my lessons have been learned through relationship, mostly primarily romantic relationship. And I've done, a lot of self-development around these areas of my life. And this is part of my platform is, I talk about love and I talk about communication and connection. And so for me, this is really big. And where I really lost my intuition and couldn't hear it was in my last relationship romantically.
And at the time, were you like aware that you had lost? Okay.
Full on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Full on. I guess it's hard when you do this type of work, right? To not be aware of that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I knew I had lost it. I knew I was completely unable to hear it. I knew when it did speak to me, I pushed it down and second guessed it. And there were so many scenarios that I had it flare up and I didn't listen. And that's my own fault. It's no one else's fault but mine. And I dug myself really deep into that hole. I got so lost that it took me a long time to find myself again.
Yeah.
But absolutely. And we all have that. And, we all lose our intuition and we all like muffle it and we all tell it to shut up sometimes too.
Right. Right. Because of fear and the mind gets in the way and the mind's very good at creating stories around fear and around.
I can convince myself of anything.
And then we've all done that too, and I mean, we're a human at the end of the day, like we were saying, right? Like we're not perfect. It's not like, and it comes in waves, right? Like there's days where you feel really aligned and really good and really connected to that inner part of yourself. And then there's days where you don't. And that's okay too. And I think it's being gentle with yourself and kind of trusting your journey and your process and knowing that you probably needed to go through that for a reason, right?
Full on. Yeah. I mean, that relationship was the reason I am who I am today. I learned the most lessons I've ever learned in my entire life from those 5 years condensed together. And I'm very strong because of it. And I know myself really well because of it. I know my habits. I know my good and bad habits. Like my triggers. I know so much about myself because of that relationship.
And that I'm sure helps you to live more intuitively.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And so thinking back to those moments, I'm sure physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, it probably didn't feel very good in your body to not follow your intuition.
And you know what? I was heavier. I'm very comfortable in my body, and I was then too. But I noticed when that relationship ended how my physical body reacted.
Wow.
How things changed physically. Like my skin, the clarity of my skin,
because when you're not living in alignment and you're living in so much disarray, it affects you on level, like we were saying. So that makes sense. And I actually talk about with weight loss, I've heard, it's a lot of emotional stuff
that you hold,
that you're holding on to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And also like muscle tension in certain areas of my body.
Wow.
That I haven't had now. It's really interesting how that manifests in the body.
Right.
And how it shows up. So,
right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. And then I had another question I was going to ask about moments you didn't follow it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, sorry, let me pull up my questions.
Yes, we have notes.
I have notes. Like I said, I'm very
important.
Type A.
And if you guys have questions or any or comments or whatever as we go, I'm noticing them here. So type them away, and then we'll get to them as soon as we see them pop up. I'm happy to answer anything. Nothing is off limits with me. So any question you have, we're very open book.
So, okay, I did want to also touch upon, so just in case we have people listening who, don't really have much experience with meditation or with yoga, or, like I said, I'm sure all of you have experienced things like these reactions that are really common that, thank you, that, is that was your intuition, butterflies in the stomach, these things. But for people who don't really have this practice already instilled and aren't really currently working on strengthening that muscle, who are starting from square one, what would you suggest?
Well, meditation is really, is a very personal thing, and it's very similar to a lot of daily practices that we have in our lives already. So you think about being on a surfboard and being out in the ocean waiting for a set to come. You're in the water, it's calm, you're maybe watching the sunset or rise, you're around, nature, and you feel connected to nature. Meditation is kind of like that. Or, a brand new baby being born, and you're holding this brand new little child and you're looking at this thing and you're like, wow, this is holy, it's kind of like that. So, or you're going hiking, you're out in nature and you're alone and you feel connected, and or I used to run in the rain in Oregon. It would be pouring down rain and I'd be like, I'm going out for a run. And I felt alive and I felt so connected. And, so meditation can be these little moments, these tiny little moments like that too. It's not the same, but it's like that. And so when we get this taste, these little droplets of that nectar, then we experience it and we can see the profoundness of it, and we feel connected, and we feel that we're a part of something greater, nature. Human nature and nature, and that symbiotic relationship with nature. And so, there's actually this podcast I listened to with Zach Bush. It was the Rich Roll podcast. And he gave the most beautiful story in there. And I'll share a brief condensed version of it. But he was out snorkeling, kind of went out way too far, realized he was very far away from shore when he looked up, and got caught in this swarm of sardines and couldn't tell up from down, right from left. Massive swarm of sardines. He was trying to swim back to shore, and he was in it for a long period of time.
Wow. And
he talks about being in this swarm so much that he felt like he became the sardines. He was like one with them. Wow. He could sense them, their movements. And then all of a sudden he sees these bubbles happening. He's like, what's going on? These birds are diving and eating the sardines, and they're going so fast his eyes can't comprehend the speed with which it's happening.
Right.
And he realizes when it's happening, and he's like, no, my people, they're being killed. And the sardines respond to him, and they're like, no, this is the part of life. This is our life cycle. We are excited to be a part of nature. We're excited about this. Like, it was their way to experience life and death and the cycle of that. And it was something that they welcomed and not feared. Wow. And so connecting with nature in that such a profound way.
Yeah.
So beautiful. And to not fear what we don't know, to not fear death, and to not fear the cycle of life and pain and all these other things, like they can be really beautiful. And when we numb and dull ourselves of the pain and of the death process and all these other things, like it becomes fear-based and a mental thing. And then we block it out, and we don't want to access that. It's scary to us. So we fear what we don't know.
And that's, I think, the number one reason why people don't meditate. It's because people don't want to get quiet. They don't want to feel.
They're afraid what's in there.
They're afraid with what's in there. Yeah.
Think about it in terms of like an addict, right? I mean, when you are meditating, when you first start to meditate and you're doing this on a consistent basis, things are going to get worse before they get better, because you have so much shit stored in your head and your body from however many years you've been in existence on this planet.
Wow,
And when you start meditating, those things are going to come up. And they're going to come out. And sometimes you felt it, and I felt it. Sometimes you have a big wave of emotion and you're crying or you're angry. You don't know why or where it's coming from. And it's really important when that happens to not try to source it. It doesn't matter where it's coming from. My teacher says, throw away the trash. Don't dig in the bin to see what you threw away. Just throw it away.
Throw it away.
Right? And so where was I going with this?
We were talking about getting quiet, the fear.
Oh yeah. So when you meditate on a consistent basis, these things start to come up. You're detoxing in a sense, right?
Yeah.
And you're having
an energetic detox.
You're detoxing, but you're also having withdrawal symptoms from the stress and the anxiety that you're used to keeping.
You're holding on.
And you're used to holding on to. So it's like a withdrawal.
Or the relationship, or which manifests in
whatever
all detox. Yeah.
Exactly. So detoxing, but also withdrawal symptoms,
Right.
And so meditation at first will unearth some things, and you will be uncomfortable, and that can be scary for people.
Right.
So they'll start and they'll have one or two and they're like, not doing this.
Yeah.
Nope. But it gets better.
And the more you detox, the more you get rid of the stuff that you're holding on to, the more you become this clear vessel and this clear being. And that's what opens up this space for you to really, feel into that inner place, that intuition, so you can literally live an intuitive life. And it's really beautiful process. That's a process, and it's a journey, and it's never ending. And that's maybe one of the more annoying parts, but you always have to do the work, and you have to stay consistent. But it's also one of the most beautiful parts, because there's always room for growth, right? And there's always room to connect deeper, whether it be with nature, with source, God, divine spirit, whatever you call it, and of course yourself. So yeah, it's really amazing. And in the beginning, yes, it's super uncomfortable, but also, you had mentioned this earlier, finding what works for you and finding what fits your lifestyle. And there's so many amazing tools out there, which is the best part. Because I know we all want to live our best, most joy-filled, fulfilled lives. And when you are connected to your intuition, and when you're connected to yourself on that, deeper level, you're able to do that, because you can actually feel, like Caley said, what feels good. And not only feel what feels good, but have the courage to then act on it. And to follow it, and to not be afraid to stay, stuck at that, maybe that job, or stay in that relationship, or to perpetually eat that thing that doesn't make you feel good. It can be as big or as small as, you want. Well,
I think also that because meditation is sort of like a trendy thing right now, there's a lot of people teaching it that aren't certified and qualified to teach it. And so they teach things that are also confusing and not accurate. And so, for instance, I'm sure you guys have all heard the term quiet your mind, calm the mind down. The mind is never going to calm down. The nature of the mind is that it's a thinking thing. It always is thinking. So you can't stop your mind from thinking. It's not possible. That's what it does. So the intention of meditation is not to calm the mind down or quiet the mind, because it won't happen. But the intention of meditation is to focus on stress and anxiety and other things that are stored within your body and your mind, so that you're able to drop into a place of equanimity and peace and calm. The mind will still be going. So actually there's a really good diagram that Transcendental Meditation, Vedic meditation teaches, which I also trained in. And so if you think about an ocean waves, right? So it's choppy and, things are happening, it's active. We start to meditate. We start to kind of drop down from the waves into the ocean. It's a little quieter, but we're still in water. We're still in the mind. Okay? So it gets quieter, and there aren't these waves. And then we really deep and drop down to the ocean and get to a place where we don't realize it, but we're in a deep, deep meditative space. And then all of a sudden, boop, a thought comes up, a bubble, boop, takes us out of the meditative space. And we're like, oh, woo, I was deep. And now I'm not, right? And then we get back up to the top, and then we're thinking, and then we might drop down, get deep again, and then a thought, boop. Right? So it's this cycle. And eventually we stay down in the depths longer and longer and longer. The mind is always there. The mind is always going, but we're down here. We're sort of tapping into subconscious realms.
Yeah.
Right? And so the mind is still running and doing its thing, but you're just somewhere else. You are not your mind, right?
Yeah.
And so it's becoming the witness, it's becoming the observer, and watching your mind like it's a 2-year-old child throwing a temper tantrum. Like, oh, isn't that interesting?
Right.
Like, oh, look at what it's doing now. Okay.
It's telling me to stay there, or just, stay in that relationship.
Or whatever. It's
whatever
thinking
it
about
is.
a movie it saw when it was 6 years old, or
Right.
replaying the entire Twilight series in his head right now. Like, funny that it's doing interesting, right?
Right.
So you observe, but you don't react, you don't respond, you don't judge.
Mm-hmm.
We're just witnessing. We're witnessing the mind. We're watching it,
right.
because that tells us that we are not the mind. That separates us from the thinking mind and brings us to a point where we realize we're bigger than that. We're not the mind. We're not the body.
Right.
We're much, much bigger than that.
Right.
And that's a beautiful thing.
It's so beautiful.
And that's one of the goals of meditation.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so amazing. And I think that was such a beautiful sort of way to explain like what can go on during meditation. And because, if you're just getting started, or you've never meditated before and you're meditating for the first time, I used to get really frustrated when thoughts would enter, because I'm like, that's not supposed to happen right now. I'm meditating. I'm not supposed to be thinking about my to-do list, my workout later.
But it happens.
But it happens.
To all of us all the time.
Okay.
Well, and that's another thing. Like, whether you have that experience and you're frustrated, or whether you go deep and you're there for a long period of time, it's all good.
It's all good. Yeah.
So you could have a really gratifying meditation or a really ungratifying meditation, but they're both beneficial.
Yeah.
They're both giving you the exact same results, exactly what you need, right? So it doesn't matter if you have the best, most deep experience, or if your mind was constantly like, boo, 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 boo. That just means that you have a lot more stress to release. The body's got a lot more stuff to release, more thoughts, more stuff. That's great. It's actually a good sign when you're thinking a lot, because you're like, you're getting all that out.
You're getting it out. Yeah.
That looks cool, huh?
Oh, nice. Oh, I love that. Okay, so what would you say your biggest piece of advice on how to follow your intuition?
What is that?
It's like you took buzz.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you.
Say that again.
So, biggest piece of advice for how to follow your intuition. So we're meditating, we're tapping in, we're tuning in, we're,
How to act on it, you mean?
Right, exactly. How to act on it.
Well, I think that depends on the thing, I think it depends on what your intuition is telling you. But some things are smaller than others. Some things are easier to act on than others. So,
or I guess maybe have you found in your experience when you were going through these bigger changes, or even the smaller ones, that there was another tool in your toolkit that kind of helped you then to act on it?
That's a good question.
I've stumped her.
Yeah, it's a good, but I like that. I like being stumped.
Yeah.
Because, we have these responses that we're like, oh, I'm going to say that next, or what we're regurgitating, but actually to feel into that, another tool in my tool belt. I think the practices for me, other than meditation and yoga, are learning not to ask and rely on other people for help and to help me make decisions. That's a big thing for me. Even if it's like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I can find out for myself what it means. I don't have to ask somebody else. Or even just as simple as asking Google. Don't ask Google. Figure it out yourself. My boyfriend does that all the time, and I appreciate that so much. I'm like, I don't know, ask Google. He's like, no, I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
So,
gosh, I'm such a Google person.
Yeah. Well, we all have this instant gratification, and so for me, it was learning to not do that, to not rely on someone else to affirm my intuition.
Okay.
To confirm what I was feeling was accurate.
I love this because then it's no longer following your intuition, right? Exactly. You're placing the power in someone else's hands.
Yeah.
And it's like actually just owning it and having the confidence to listen to it. And that obviously comes with time. And, it's just a matter of that's just another way in which we can strengthen this intuitive muscle, is to start small, right?
Yeah, like daily practices.
Practices.
I do my tarot cards. I have my gratitude journal, which is here somewhere. And then even like making my matcha every morning, I wake up and it's a ritual. I go and I take 10 minutes to put all the delicious things in it and give my body all the things I want and need. That's small, like tiny little things, daily rituals that help you to feel like you're giving yourself something good, whether it's mental body, spiritual body, physical body, you know, and you're responding and giving those parts of yourself what they need. It could be that tiny. It doesn't have to be big. So
I love that.
yeah, I think daily practices were another one for me.
Mhm.
Like finding what they were and establishing those and then doing them consistently is something that really helped me with my intuition as well.
Yeah. No, that's so special. And we only have about 10 minutes. So if there's any questions, send them over soon. But I really also want to talk about yoga nidra because I know that that's something that you do, well, you teach, but I'm assuming you also utilize as well. And
Yeah.
I know for me, I did not know what yoga nidra was until I started working with Caley more. And I've actually had the privilege of coming to one of your yoga nidras in person, which was really great. So can you just explain what that is and sort of what's going on with the body during a yoga nidra?
So yoga nidra is a really beautiful guided meditation. It's the one meditation I practice lying down, and you're supposed to be lying down because your body needs to be in complete relaxation. And what it does is nidra puts your body in such a profound and deep state of relaxation that you're able to process trauma and emotion, heightened emotions, whatever it is that's stored in your system, and release it in a way that's very peaceful. So they use it a lot with PTSD. It basically reprograms your nervous system. And you work with different hemispheres of the brain, right side versus left side, in a very strategic way. In yoga, we have the koshas, which are different bodies: energy body, bliss body, physical body, all these different bodies. And nidra is a very precise science that takes you through the different bodies, the different koshas. And so it's very imperative, if you are practicing nidra, to do it with someone who's trained it. I trained with Jana Romer. She was my teacher. She trained with, I think, Tanis Fishman. And they both have nidras on, free nidras on Insight Timer. And then, and I also learned from Jana how to weave astrology into the yoga nidra.
Yeah, that's so cool.
So taking the current astrology of the month and then adding that in. So, for instance, we're in Scorpio season right now, and Scorpio rules the womb. So like any sort of like rebirthing, reprogramming is a really beautiful way to experience nidra. So, and Scorpionic energy is all about like death and rebirth, as well. That Phoenix is the final stage of the Scorpio. So, accepting death into your daily life and integrating it into your daily life is very Scorpionic as well. So every nidra changes based on the astrology and what's happening. And I think that gives people really profound tools to access what they need to access and shift what they need to shift. And Joe Dispenza, who I'm actually training with in February, and he'll be at the Attune Festival this weekend. I'm really excited to meet him. He has done a lot of work with yoga nidra, and he's a scientist that makes the esoteric seem really tangible and understandable, because he does it in a way that's very scientific based. It doesn't seem out there like woo woo. Anyway, he's done a lot of nidra and a lot of research around nidra, and what's really cool that's come out recently is he's proving that the pineal gland in the brain can actually, during nidra, release DMT. DMT, dimethyltryptamine, is a chemical that our bodies contain, but they release in very large extreme quantities when we're born and when we die. It's also, you can get DMT 5-MeO. DMT is from the toad, so a lot of people call it toad medicine. Not frog, but toad. Frog is a different type of medicine. But anyway, so when doing nidra, you can actually access your pineal gland, and it can actually secrete larger amounts of DMT.
Wow.
This research is just coming out, which is really profound. Like that we can actually send our bodies into our own, trips. We can trip ourselves out. We don't need external drugs. We can do it. We can access that. And so this is the beautiful thing. If you do drugs or plant medicine or whatever, what's beautiful about that is that it shows you that it's possible. It shows you what is actually out there and what's attainable. It fast tracks you to those like, oh, wow, here I am in this beautiful space, and this exists and it's possible. But then what's cool about meditation is it teaches you how to get there without the plant medicine. It teaches you how to get there without the drug. Whatever it is, you know, and we need to be able to do that. We need to be able to access these places within us because they're there, and it's profound and powerful when we can do it without any external influence.
Wow.
And so that's what's really cool about Nidra for me, what's coming out in the research right now. It's like, wow, we have that capability to get our bodies to release DMT.
That's crazy.
Wow. How
There's
cool
so
is that?
much science coming out and research around all of these practices. And it's
so cool.
So cool and it's so amazing. And Nidra is just so, I mean, I've only tried it a couple of times and it's really amazing. And it's a really lovely practice too, in the sense where you are lying down and, you know, it doesn't feel as like stiff sometimes as some other meditation practices or classes that I've gone to. And it just promotes such, for me, it was just a deep level of relaxation. So I know it's something that if I was
sleep. Yoga Nidra is yoga.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. So if I was to, you know, when I've done this, it's been usually before bed, but is there a different time of day? Nope. Always before bed.
Any time of day.
Any time of day.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And you have Nidras, correct?
Yeah. So I record a new one every month and I put it up on my website. So it's $9. It's nominal. And you can just download it and listen to it whenever you want.
Amazing. And it's, you know, for me too, I'm just checking our time. When I first started meditating, it was really, I could not just sit with myself and my thoughts and, you know, everything I had going on in my life. So I needed some sort of guidance. So for me, it was a lot of guided visual meditations, like visualizations, made it much easier for me to sort of ease into just meditating in general. And Nidra, it's really lovely because you sort of feel like you're being held the entire time. You're being guided, whoever's leading it. So with Caley's recordings, like you're talking pretty much the whole time.
So you don't have to worry about, you don't have to think about anything. You just receive.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So, I mean, that being said, it was pretty much all of the questions I had for Caley, but just to kind of give you guys a recap, the intuition sits in our body. We all have access to it, and it's such a powerful tool. And the more you know, I like to think of it like a muscle, and the more you strengthen this muscle, the more you can live from this intuitive place. And I sort of like to say, you know, live an intuitive life. And for both Caley and myself, it's been meditation and yoga. I'm not sure if there's another way. Nature, exercise. I mean, obviously anything that helps you to, I like to think of it as like just dropping into your body and really like, it's also a process of getting to know yourself, right? Like, I think we spend so much time and energy with other people and spend so much time and energy with fostering and working on and communicating with our partner, our friends, our family. But, you know, the relationship with yourself is just as important, if not more important.
Oh, it's
the most important. It's the most important, because when you're in that solid, clear, really amazing, loving relationship with yourself, it's going to strengthen everything else in your life.
Oh yeah, full on. I mean, one of my teachers, Guru Jagat, she says, you know, to be in a deep and committed relationship with yourself, right? Work on all your own shit before you blame someone else for all their shit, because you got enough yourself.
You've got enough.
And once you've mastered your own relationship with yourself, then you can invite in another person and have a relationship with that other person. Once you've mastered the relationship with the other person, which by the way takes lifetimes, then you can invite in a third person. So all y'all who are out there and like you polyamory and all that stuff, like woo, like I can't even imagine what you're going through communication wise, relationship, like all of the lessons. But like we gotta work on ourselves. We gotta. That's where it all starts, and it impacts everything else. So like tune in, turn in, however you need to do that. Find the practices that work for you.
And just do them consistently. Could you put? Oh yes,
the teachers.
So
on Insight Timer,
that was a great question. So I will be sending the follow-up email to all of you guys who tuned in, and what you'll receive from me is I'll send all of Caley's info, her website. I'm sure most of you guys already follow her on Instagram, but all that good stuff. And I'll be sure to include all the
we'll give you all the apps and all the things that I
the
mentioned,
teachers and
and
everything.
apps.
And all of you guys are also going to get a free session with me. I extended that offer, and I'm just so excited. Yeah,
She's good.
I'm just so honored and grateful to be sharing all of this with all of you. So thank you all so much again for tuning in, and thank you so much, Caley. This was so nice. And